Hey, it's Matt Roush,
And Mike Brennan.
and we're back with another segment of the M Squared TechCast, MITechNews.TV.
And we have calling in from sunny Miami, eat your heart out, Michigan, Andrew Saltz. All right, let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing. Now, you have a company that's really involved in artificial intelligence. Why don't you kind of introduce everybody to what your company's name is, what they do, that sort of thing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so our company Evolve, we sit at the intersection of artificial intelligence, life science data, and biologic therapies. You guys may have heard a lot about antibodies, so we actually focus on training computers on how to discover antibodies. And we really put patients at the center of our mission about accelerating how healing is delivered and discovered. I mean, accelerating healing is something we really need right now to allow us to leave our homes, to protect the people at risk, to restart the economy, and really to help affect those affected by the coronavirus, whether it's patients or healthcare workers. And so we use AI to reduce the time it takes to discover drugs and really significantly reduce the failure rates in pharma, which are over 90%.
Wow. The antibody test in particular, nobody really knows if they've had COVID-19 or not. And so they're urging everyone to get one, but no one seems to be able to find where they can get one, sort of that circle thing. But it's good that you're doing that. So that, how has AI helped you in that particular area?
So we're on our end, we're not actually focused on the diagnostic side. We're actually focused more on therapies.
Okay.
But from the diagnostic, but this is what you're talking about in general is actually a really big challenge. So science takes time, right? And so running these experiments, running them in the laboratories, they actually take a lot of time, and they cost a lot of money. So in general, the average amount of time it takes for a drug to go from the laboratory into patients in the doctor's office is anywhere from 10 to 15 years. We don't have that amount of time to deal with the coronavirus. So, but when we see all these failures that are happening, you've been hearing about these diagnostic tests not working very well. It's because we're really trying to move way faster than the science is proceeding. So we're constantly getting new information from research labs about the coronavirus, and every day there's like 30 papers coming out about the coronavirus. So being able to have that information when these diagnostic tests are being developed, it takes time to actually study them. So with artificial intelligence, what we do is we actually try to generate and fail as much as possible in the laboratory. And so, in the computer. So, and that by doing that, by failing in the computer where it's fast and cheap, we're lessening the likelihood of failing in the laboratory or in the animal studies or in the doctor's office or in the clinical trials where it's way more expensive and causes way more risk.
Matt?
Okay, interesting. We've heard a lot. We've been hearing about artificial intelligence for years. It's kind of been overhyped in some ways. I still can't talk to my HAL 9000 computer like I would to a person. And maybe that's a good thing in view of what happened. But how do you define AI, and what do you see as its promises and shortcomings?
Yeah, there's this really great quote that from an economist, and it said that nobody wants a drill. What they want is a hole, right? And so I think a lot of people, when they talk about AI, they say it in terms of like the idea of a drill, this thing that's going to change the world. It's like, but like if you give a drill to a 6-year-old, they're going to think of it's like a ray gun. And if you give it to somebody who's super experienced in it, they're going to have to be able to the capability to do something with it. So really, I think one of the big challenges about sort of the demystification about AI is less about thinking about what it can do and what its practical implications are. So, not thinking about it as some smart machine or some theoretical statistical algorithm. And the way that I think about it is, the way that we think about it actually at our organization is really, you can use AI to automate, right? So it's turn like a manual task into something that can be done automatically by a machine. You can use it to assist, where now you're moving into the ability to support someone's mental capabilities. So think about like a calculator multiplying really large numbers. It's not to say you can't multiply them, but it's just easier. We can use it to analyze. So when you're talking about, business intelligence, where you see graphs on a pie chart, or really when you're talking about big data, when looking at 80 billion data points, there's no human mind can handle that capacity. The other thing is really, can you accelerate things? Can you really predict what's going to happen? And we see a lot of that in the social media, where you're getting this predictive advertising, or in finance where you're trying to predict the value of things. And then all of this comes together and really trying to augment humanity, right? Making humanity better, right? So a calculator augments your ability to multiply. It doesn't replace it per se. And so that's why when I think about AI, I think about can we replace the artificial in artificial intelligence with automated intelligence, assistive intelligence, analytical intelligence, accelerated intelligence, augmented intelligence. And so really think about the practical implications of it, rather than just sort of this mystical tool like HAL, right? HAL 9000. So really thinking about it in the practical implications of the whole that it generates, not what it is a drill.
Yeah, we had HAL 9000. He'd probably eject you out of the house, Matt, and you'd be exposed to all this COVID-19 contagion, right? So
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Right?
Anyway, so evolve. How do you see evolving, and along with AI? Where's this going?
Yeah, so there's this really long value chain in pharmaceuticals, right? And by the way, our name is spelled EVQLV, and there's a reason why it's spelled that way. We have a video on our website, and our YouTube channel explains where our name comes from.
I was wondering where the Q came in.
Yeah, it's an interesting fact that actually has to do with science. So I'm not going to go too far into it, but basically it has to do with evolutionary algorithms and antibodies themselves, which are made up of amino acids. But you go to our website and see the video where our name comes from. But in terms of, so the value chain of pharmaceuticals is generally, you go from a target. So I'll use the coronavirus as an example. The coronavirus is actually in some cases, it's the target of the disease, of the medication. Sorry, not the disease. It's the disease that's the target. So in cancer, there's many different types of cancers, and they all have different targets that one might go after. So that's sort of where drug discovery starts from. Then you actually have to discover a drug to target the disease, and you have to optimize that drug to make sure that you can manufacture it, that it works in humans. Then we've got to test it in animals, and you apply to the FDA to be able to do human trials, and you do 3 phases of human trials. And if that all works, then you apply to the FDA to get approval. And then at that point, the drug actually goes into doctors' offices where they can prescribe it to patients. Today, we're actually focused on drug discovery at Evolve, using AI for drug discovery. But there's all sorts of practical implications that we can use it for: accelerating animal studies, accelerating human studies, where you're optimizing the patient selection, and even doing target discovery, because a lot of times we don't actually know the causes of diseases. So we think our view is that we can actually apply artificial intelligence to each phase and turn that 10 to 15 year process into something that may be 5 years or even shorter. So over time, our goal is to apply AI to those various different parts of the drug discovery and development process. And that's how we're going to be evolving our company.
Okay.
I mean, we're technologists at heart. So our team is 80% data scientists, data engineers, structural computational biologists. And so we're a technology company applying to life science. Similar to like Uber is not a taxi company. They're a livery company, but they're a technology company apply to moving people around. They weren't a taxi company adding technology on top. And so that's sort of how we think about things. And we think it's a little bit different.
So as a practical matter, what do you actually do for a pharma research lab? What would be your typical engagement? What would that look like?
Yeah, so what we do is, if let's say, for example, a collaborator has a particular target that they want to go after, we've actually in our computer, we've modeled evolution. So we actually can recreate the way evolution occurs. Now, when your body responds to the if someone gets the coronavirus, you've heard about the antibodies that are formed in the body as a result, the immune response. You've heard about this before.
Right.
What's actually happening is that's actually an evolutionary process. That's a process. That's something that's been generated over the millennia or even longer of your body generating these antibodies. It's a mutational process. It has been through evolution. So we've actually modeled that in the computers. And we've actually modeled ways to discover whether a drug will actually work outside of that. So thinking about, like, is it stable at 98 degrees Fahrenheit? Why is that drug stable at 98 degrees Fahrenheit? Why is that important? Well, that's the average body temperature. So if you inject a drug, it's not stable at 98 degrees Fahrenheit, it's not going to work in the body. So those are some of the things that we do computationally. So we're predicting this stuff so we can fail in the computer, so that limits the laboratory failure. And so the way that we engage with our partners currently is that because we're a fully computational company, we collaborate with companies that have laboratories that actually produce the drugs that we generate in the computer. And so that adds, that says, okay, we can make it, and now they can test it in the laboratory, which proves to the scientific community at large that not only that our technology is working, but that actually these drugs have enhanced values that allow them to move faster through animal studies and human studies. And so that's some of the ways that we actually engage with collaborators.
All right. So what is not artificial intelligence? You were saying a lot of people have this misconception of what artificial intelligence is, but it really isn't. So what would you say it is not, or what it can't do?
So, artificial intelligence is actually the recreating or sort of recreating in the computer what human intelligence would be. And so I think what artificial intelligence is not, I don't think it's like the Terminator per se. I think a lot of people fear that we're going to see this machines taking over our lives, and I'm really like, there's a big fear around that. I think that's not what it is. And when you think about the HAL 9000, I mean, we're actually getting pretty close to that, right? I mean, there was a really funny joke that says like, hey, why don't you have Facebook? And I said, well, I don't want Mark Zuckerberg, saying that to my girlfriend, and like, I don't want Mark Zuckerberg listening to me. I laughed, my girlfriend laughed, Siri laughed, Alexa laughed, right? So it's like, those are all forms of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence really is like it's not specifically programming, which is a lot of things that people think about. It's not like if this, then that. That's just functional programming. To me, artificial intelligence is actually trying to predict the probabilistic nature of the way that we behave. So when you're crossing the street and you see that there may be 7 seconds left to cross the street, you're making a decision based upon your statistical thinking of the way your brain thinks about, do I have enough time to cross the street, right? And maybe you get to 1 second, and maybe if you're like a lot younger, or you don't see any cars coming, you're just going to run across the street, or like you're going to make that move. That probabilistic decision making is actually something we can program into computers, but it's oftentimes very narrow. So there's like there was a research study that came out fairly recently that said that machines have gotten better at reading breast cancer scans than radiologists. But the thing is that it's actually really good at reading a certain type of scan. But if you have these anomalous scans that like no one's really seen before, where it's not like a very common cancer, like ampullary cancer, the machine's not going to be that good at it because it's not very good at picking up anomalies. And it's sort of like what you think about when we all try to figure out what's going to happen after the coronavirus. We don't have any historical information, even internally to ourselves, to try to understand what the new normal is going to be like. And so computers are actually have that similar challenge. If they don't have enough data that they're trained on, historically, they don't have any ways of predicting, and they're not really good at doing, they're not intuitive. Machines are not intuitive right now. And we actually, as humans, actually have really good intuition. So I think understanding that and sort of not try to classify everything as AI, really, sometimes it's just like, well, it's a computer, it's a computer solution. It's not, or maybe it's a mechanical solution. It's not AI as a solution.
Okay.
So it reminds me a little of my occasional interactions with tech support on the phone, where if your problem isn't one of the 10 ones on their list, you're pretty much screwed. It sounds like AI can be a lot like that.
Correct. And if you think about it, if you've tried to interact with these automated systems, right, like how terrible it is, right? Like speak your number, speak your name, and like how many times you have to say that. And in the end, you're just like customer service, right? Until somebody comes on the line. That's actually that was the transition into AI, right? That's try to transition. I remember trying to do a call like that with Apple not a long time ago. And I actually made it all the way through without ever speaking to a person. I was so impressed, right? So you can sort of see the difference between like what people try to think is AI and what it actually can do. And I think we have these middle grounds where we have to transition, and it's painful to transition. So.
Andrew Satz, we're going to have to leave it at that. We're running out of time in this segment. We'd like to have you back on the show here later this year if you're interested.
I'd love that.
Hopefully the weather will be nicer in Miami, so you can get to the beach, right? So
and you can come down to Miami.
Oh, okay, perfect. I like it. So, all right, take us out, Matt.
All right. Well, thanks very much for being with us today. We'll be right back with another segment of the M Squared TechCast. For right now, it's Matt Roush
and Mike Brennan.
And you're watching MITechNews.TV.
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life. But LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.